Before we begin, let me ask you something. Have you ever been ashamed of where you came from? Have you ever looked at your parents, their worn out clothes, their calloused hands, and wished they were someone else? Many of us chase success, forgetting the sacrifices made for us. Many of us take love for granted, only to realize its value when it's too late. This is the story of Lorenzo, a young man who wanted nothing more than to escape his poor fishing village. He dreamed of wealth, of luxury, of a life far from the smell of salt and fish. But in his pursuit of a brighter future, he turned his back on the one man who loved him the most, his father, Marco. By the time he understood the truth, it was too late. This is not just a story about a fisherman and his son. It's a story about sacrifice, love, and the painful cost of regret. Now let's begin. 1. The sea and the hardworking father. In a small coastal village in Amalfi, where the turquoise waves crashed against the rocky shores every day, there lived a poor fisherman named Marco. He was a simple man with tanned skin, calloused hands, and deep eyes that reflected the vastness of the ocean. Marco had a son named Lorenzo, his only child. Since childhood, Lorenzo had watched his father leave at dawn, battling the unpredictable waves to bring home fresh fish to feed their family. But instead of admiration, Lorenzo felt only shame. He didn't want to grow up to be a poor fisherman like his father. He dreamed of leaving the small village, escaping to grand cities like Rome or Milan. One day, while Lorenzo was playing with his friends at the harbor, Marco returned from the sea, his clothes wet and his hands carrying a basket full of fish. Seeing his father, Lorenzo quickly turned away, fearing his friends would notice. One of the boys laughed and said, "Lorenzo, is that your father? He smells like fish." Lorenzo's face turned red with embarrassment and anger. "Shut up, he's not my father." Marco stood there hearing every word, but he said nothing. He simply lowered his head and quietly walked away. 2. A dream to escape the village. As Lorenzo grew older, his resentment towards his father's profession deepened. One evening, he turned to his mother, Bianca, and said, "Mother, I want to go to the city to study. I don't want to spend my life surrounded by fish in the sea." Bianca glanced at Marco. The fisherman remained silent for a long moment before nodding. "If that is your dream, I will do whatever it takes to help you achieve it." From that day on, Marco worked harder than ever. He went out to sea even when the storms raged, even when the waves threatened to swallow his boat. People in the village warned him, "Marco, don't push yourself too hard. One day the sea will take you." But Marco only smiled and said, "I cannot stop. I must earn enough money to give my son a better future." 3. The growing distance. Thanks to his father's sacrifices, Lorenzo was finally able to leave for university in Florence. He promised to write home often, but as the months passed, his letters became fewer and fewer. In the city, he was surrounded by wealthy friends, dressed in fine suits, living in elegant apartments. Slowly, he began to feel ashamed of his humble origins. One afternoon, while having coffee with his friends, someone asked, "Lorenzo, what does your father do?" Lorenzo hesitated. He thought of his father, standing on his old fishing boat, his hands rough from years of labor. He feared that if he told the truth, his friends would look down on him, so he lied. "My father is a seafood merchant." He didn't know that back home, Marco was still waking up before dawn, still counting every coin in his wooden savings box just to send money to his son. 4. The father's quiet visit years passed, and Lorenzo graduated with honors, becoming a businessman. But he never once returned home. One day, Marco decided to visit his son in the city. He wore his cleanest clothes and brought along some dried fish, Lorenzo's childhood favorite. When he arrived at Lorenzo's office, he hesitated outside for a long time before finally gathering the courage to ask the receptionist, "Excuse me, may I see Lorenzo?" The receptionist glanced at him from head to toe, noticing his old worn-out clothes, and frowned. "Do you have an appointment?" "Oh, no, I am his father." She picked up the phone and called Lorenzo's office. A few moments later, Lorenzo came downstairs. When he saw his father dressed so simply, holding a small bag in his hands, he froze. He quickly looked around, worried that his colleagues might see. Marco smiled warmly. "Lorenzo, it's been so long since you visited. I missed you, so I came to see you." But Lorenzo didn't smile back. Instead, he grabbed his father's arm and pulled him aside, speaking in a harsh whisper. "Why did you come here? If my colleagues find out you're just a fisherman, they'll laugh at me." Marco stood still, his deep eyes filled with sadness. "Are you ashamed of me?" Lorenzo didn't answer. He simply turned his back and walked away. Marco watched his son disappear into the office. He sighed, then quietly placed the bag of dried fish on a bench before leaving. 5. Too late for regret. Months later, Lorenzo received a call from his mother. "Lorenzo, your father, he had an accident at sea." Lorenzo rushed back home, but when he arrived, it was too late. His father, the man he had once been ashamed of, was gone forever. Beside Marco's bed, his mother placed a small wooden box. When Lorenzo opened it, his heart clenched. Inside were the coins his father had saved for years, sacrificing everything to give him a better future. Tears streamed down Lorenzo's face as he fell to his knees, gripping his father's cold, lifeless hands. He wanted to say sorry. He wanted to say, "I love you," but it was too late. No matter how many times he cried, his father would never hear him again. Life lessons: never be ashamed of your parents, for they have given everything to raise you. Regret is the heaviest burden to carry in life. A parent's love is like the ocean, vast, deep, and always waiting for us to return. Treasure your parents while you still can.